I never thought it was a permanent thing. In '64, he had taken too much sleep medication.
For years, the world believed they knew how Elvis Presley's story ended. But hidden deep inside Graceland was a secret vault that was untouched, sealed, and full of truth. When it was finally opened, what they found was more than just old papers. It was a heartbreaking window into his final days, which was full of pain, hope, and shocking secrets no one ever expected. Join us as we uncover the real truth behind the legend's death. Discovering the secret room. While fixing up the basement at Graceland, workers unexpectedly uncovered something no one had seen before. They were doing regular repairs when they noticed a strange wall. At first glance, it looked like any other part of the basement, but behind it was a perfectly hidden door. The design blended so well with the surroundings that no one had ever guessed it was there. What made it even stranger was that none of the original building plans or records ever mentioned this secret area. It wasn't supposed to exist, not according to the history of the house. Behind the hidden entrance, they discovered a tightly sealed room that hadn't been touched since Elvis Presley passed away in 1977. The moment the door opened, a rush of air came out, old, musty, and heavy with the smell of aged leather, yellowing paper, and something that reminded people of stored machinery. As emergency lights flickered on, everyone could finally see what had been kept inside all these years. The room was like a private archive, untouched and perfectly organized. There were rows of shelves filled with boxes, filing cabinets, and personal belongings, all carefully placed as if someone had followed a detailed system. Whoever stored these things wanted to make sure they stayed exactly how they were left. But what shocked everyone most wasn't just what they found, it was the vault itself. This wasn't an ordinary room hidden for fun. It was built with serious care and purpose. The walls were thick and reinforced with steel, like something out of a high-security bank or top-secret government building. The air inside was kept just right, not too hot or cold, not too dry or damp. And all of it had been running quietly for decades, powered by a special electric line that didn't even connect to the main house or show up on any official records. This setup had been kept alive in total silence for more than 40 years. Nobody at Graceland had any idea this place existed. The vault was completely unknown, even to Lisa Marie Presley. When she was called and brought to see it herself, her face said it all: shock, confusion, and disbelief. She had spent much of her childhood in this very home and had always believed she knew every corner of it.
You hang out and just have fun together?
He was not strict at all.
But this discovery told her there were secrets even she wasn't let in on. That raised big questions like, who built this room? And why did they keep it hidden even from Elvis's own daughter? The vault measured around 12 by 15 feet, tightly sealed and protected from every possible threat: fires, floods, even earthquakes. Whoever created it didn't just want to hide things. They wanted to make sure nothing could destroy them, no matter what happened in the world outside. As experts began opening boxes and sorting through the contents, they realized this wasn't just a collection of Elvis's memories. Sure, there were photos, letters, recordings, and personal objects from his earliest days in music to the final moments of his life, but there was more, much more. These weren't just mementos, they were detailed records. Everything had been documented with extreme care, like someone had been watching, noting down events, and storing away truths that were never supposed to be made public. It quickly became clear that this secret collection told a different story than the one fans had known for years. Behind the fame and glitter of Elvis's life, there were layers of hidden information, raising more questions than answers. Who put this archive together? Who had been quietly paying to keep it running for decades after Elvis's death? And most importantly, what were they trying to protect, or maybe even hide? As more of the vault's secrets come to light, one thing becomes certain. The truth behind this hidden room was far deeper and more mysterious than anyone at Graceland ever imagined. The dark truth behind the king's fortune and freedom. The first box they opened inside the hidden vault revealed something completely unexpected and heartbreaking. It was filled with financial documents that told a very different story from what the world believed about Elvis Presley. For years, fans had seen him as a superstar who earned millions and lived like royalty. But these private records showed something far more troubling. Behind the scenes, There had been shady deals, strange money movements, and signs that someone had been using Elvis's success for their own gain. The files revealed large amounts of money going out regularly to people whose names weren't in any of the official records connected to Elvis. In many cases, the names were replaced with only initials or codes, making it impossible to tell who was getting the money or why. Some of these payments were as high as tens of thousands of dollars every month, and they had gone on for years. Even more confusing was the fact that there were no business reasons attached to these payments. Nothing showed what they were for, and nobody could explain them. As they dug deeper, they found evidence that some of Elvis's money had been funneled into secret businesses and hidden bank accounts in other countries. These companies didn't seem to do anything useful. They looked like they were created just to hide where the money was going. What made it worse was that these operations were run without Elvis being fully in charge. It looked like someone had set up a system that slowly pulled money out of his fortune while keeping him in the dark. Things became even more painful when they came across certain contracts. These weren't ordinary business deals. They were extreme agreements that gave almost complete control of Elvis's life and career to his longtime manager, Colonel Tom Parker.
There was a big knock on my door about an hour after I'd gone to bed. And I woke up and it was Tom Hewlett knocking on my door.
The terms were incredibly strict, locking Elvis into arrangements that left him with little freedom to make choices about his own work. The documents suggested he couldn't easily leave these agreements, no matter how unhappy he was. It was as if he was trapped in a job he couldn't quit, even when it was destroying him. As they continued exploring the vault, they stumbled upon medical files that revealed another devastating truth. Elvis had been struggling with prescription medications long before the public ever knew. His health problems didn't suddenly appear at the end of his life. The records showed that his pill use began during his time in the military and only got worse over the years. Multiple doctors were involved, prescribing medicine without talking to each other, which led to dangerous combinations. These files told the sad story of a man whose body was slowly being harmed by medications given out too freely. Alongside the medical papers were personal letters that Elvis had written but never sent. They were deeply emotional, filled with fear, frustration, and sadness. In his own handwriting, he talked about how overwhelmed he felt, how unhappy he was with his career, and how trapped he had become. He mentioned wanting to retire, to leave the country, and even to take legal steps to escape the people managing him. These pages showed a man reaching out silently, unsure of who he could trust, carrying a heavy burden that no one around him seemed to notice. But what shook everyone the most was what came next. Tucked away among the papers were logs, detailed notes that tracked Elvis's every move. There were lists of who visited him, what pills he took, who he called, and even what he said in private conversations. Someone had been secretly watching and recording nearly everything he did. And this didn't stop, even when his health was clearly failing. The notes continued until the very week he passed away. Even more chilling was the discovery that Elvis had found out about some of this spying. Handwritten notes revealed he had tried to get to the bottom of it. He had hired investigators and reached out to lawyers to find out who was behind the monitoring. But it looked like those efforts didn't go far. The saddest part? Some of the people involved in watching him might have been the very ones he trusted most. This part of the vault told a story that was hard to accept. Behind the fame, behind the music and flashing lights, was a man who had been controlled, used, and watched, who struggled in silence and tried to find a way out, but never did. When privacy becomes a prison. Inside that mysterious vault, one of the most shocking things discovered was a large stack of old-fashioned audio tapes. These weren't the kind fans had long hoped to hear. No secret concerts, no unreleased songs. Instead, these were deeply private recordings, clearly made without anyone's permission. Each tape was labeled by date, place, and coded initials that didn't reveal any names. The setup was far too advanced for casual spying, and everything about it pointed to a highly organized operation, something that took real money and real skill to pull off.
Get her back here!
The sound on the tapes was clear, far too clean to be accidental. That meant someone had hidden microphones in places where Elvis spent a lot of time. These weren't just one or two rooms. They must have been all over the mansion, in his dressing areas, his cars, his offices, maybe even more. Whoever was behind this had access not just to Elvis's schedule, but to his private life, his routines, and his safe spaces. It was creepy, calculated, and deeply unsettling. Listening to the tapes was like stepping into Elvis's world, but not the shiny one full of fans and flashing cameras. These recordings captured him when no one else was supposed to be listening. He talked about feeling tired of being managed, worried about his health, and scared about the money that kept disappearing. In one recording from the early 70s, he spoke about wanting to cut ties with his manager, but feeling stuck. The contracts were so strict that leaving would have cost him more than he could afford. It was clear he felt trapped, desperate to take his life back, but unsure how. The tapes also showed Elvis trying to find a way out. He was talking with people, asking for advice, trying to figure out if he could break contracts, move away, or even stop performing altogether. You could hear the pain in his voice as he tried to explain how fame had become a cage he couldn't escape from. All he wanted was freedom, from the pressure, the people, and the expectations.
You know, maybe occasionally ask for help.
Yeah.
Which was the case with this record too. Like, I just felt like a hand came down to me, like this, you know?
Some of the recordings were phone calls with doctors from different parts of the country. They revealed how Elvis had been managing his growing need for medications. He wasn't just randomly asking for pills. He knew what to say, how to explain his pain, his stage fright, and his exhaustion. He used smart medical words and crafted his stories carefully so that each doctor would write prescriptions without realizing he was also getting them from others. This careful planning had started much earlier than people ever guessed, but there was more. Some of the most heartbreaking recordings were conversations that had nothing to do with business. These were private talks between Colonel Parker and strangers, where Elvis was spoken about like an object. His health, his performances, even his bank accounts were discussed like items on a checklist. It seemed clear Elvis wasn't part of these talks, and worse, his personal health details were being passed around as if they were part of a business deal. Things that should have stayed private were used to justify choices that only benefited the people around him. Even more painful were the tapes from inside his home, his actual living spaces. Someone had placed recording devices in rooms meant to be safe, bedrooms, family areas, places where he shared secrets with loved ones, opened up about missing his late mother, and spoke about fears he didn't dare say out loud in public. These weren't meant for anyone else to hear, and yet someone had been listening to every word. What made everything even scarier was the pattern that started to emerge. Whenever Elvis began pushing back, trying to make decisions for himself, planning to change managers, or trying to take control, the recordings became more frequent. It was as if someone didn't want him to break free and was watching his every step more closely the moment he tried. The final tapes, made just before he passed away, were the most haunting. His voice was worn down. He sounded tired, anxious, and suspicious. He spoke openly about how he felt surrounded by people he could no longer trust. He believed he was being watched and followed, even in his own home. In one of the last recordings, he talked about exposing everything, about collecting proof and fighting back. He had started planning to reveal the truth, to shine a light on everything that had been done to him behind the scenes. That last tape changed everything, because it showed Elvis wasn't just imagining things. He knew what was going on. He just didn't know how deep it ran, or how close the people responsible really were. The idea that someone who knew him so well, someone who had full access to his life, was behind all of this, was the most chilling part of all. This wasn't just spying, it was betrayal by someone who had been standing right beside him the whole time. The pictures that told the truth. Inside the secret vault, there was another disturbing find, hundreds of photographs that were clearly never meant for anyone to see. These weren't the glamorous images of Elvis that fans were used to. They weren't joyful family moments or promotional pictures for the media. These were private, deeply personal snapshots of his life, and many of them were heartbreaking to look at.
I remember lots of conversations. I mean, he and I spent a lot of time together. Upstairs, upper part of Graceland is basically his room and my room.
The photos showed Elvis in moments that were never meant to be captured, sitting quietly at home, hosting small gatherings, or simply trying to relax at Graceland. But what made these pictures especially alarming was how they were taken. The angles and shadows in many of the images made it clear that they were captured secretly from hidden places or long distances using cameras with strong zoom lenses. In most of them, Elvis didn't even seem to know anyone was watching, let alone taking photos. What was worse was the condition he appeared to be in. Over time, the pictures told a quiet but powerful story. You could see the changes in his body, in his face, and in the way he carried himself. Some images showed him looking sick, drained, or clearly affected by medication. They captured him when he was struggling, mentally, physically, and emotionally. These were moments where he should have had privacy, dignity, and care. Instead, someone had been silently recording his decline. The quality of the photography was another unsettling clue. These weren't blurry or accidental shots. They were taken with skill and precision using expensive cameras and advanced techniques that only professionals would know how to use. Some of the shots were taken in dark rooms or late at night, which meant special film and tools were involved. That level of effort wasn't something a fan or a nosy neighbor could pull off. It pointed to something much larger, a secret mission carried out by people who knew exactly what they were doing. Among the most painful photos were the ones that looked almost medical. They focused on small details like his skin, posture, and physical symptoms that showed how much his health had been declining. These images felt clinical, as if they were taken for doctors or for some sort of private investigation. There was nothing respectful or caring about them. They were cold and intentional, like someone had been studying him instead of helping him. There were also pictures of Elvis meeting with people whose faces weren't familiar. These meetings didn't look casual or friendly. They often took place late at night or in quiet corners, and Elvis's body language in the images told its own story. He didn't look comfortable. In some shots, he looked worried. In others, he seemed tense, guarded, or afraid. Nobody could say for sure who these people were or what those meetings were about, but the photos hinted at serious, possibly dangerous things going on behind the scenes. Even more unsettling was how far this secret spying went. The photographers hadn't just been focused on Elvis, they took pictures of everyone close to him, friends, family, visitors, anyone who walked in or out of his life. Graceland, his home, had been turned into something that looked more like a crime scene under constant watch than a place of comfort. Every guest, every conversation, even romantic moments had been captured and kept. Some of the most private parts of Elvis's life were exposed in these images. His relationships, his tender moments, his heartaches, nothing had been off limits. The invasion of privacy wasn't just deep, it was total. Whoever was behind it had watched everything unfold through a camera lens, and they did it over many years. Experts who later examined the photographs said the work had clearly been done by more than one person. The styles, tools, and timing all pointed to a group of trained photographers working with ongoing support. This wasn't the obsession of one person. It was an organized, professional operation with serious resources and a clear goal. The last photos in the collection were taken just days before Elvis passed away. These final images showed a man who looked more alone than ever. His face carried the weight of suspicion, fear, and sadness. He was trying to figure out who had been spying on him, trying to put an end to it. But the pictures also showed the tragic truth. Even as he tried to fight back, the cameras never stopped. The spying continued until the very end, capturing his last efforts to protect himself, efforts that, heartbreakingly, never got the chance to succeed. The stolen privacy and peace. One of the most painful discoveries in the hidden vault came from documents that exposed the cruelest truth of all. Elvis had been betrayed by the very people he trusted the most. These weren't small arguments or business fallouts. What the papers revealed was far deeper and more personal. They showed a clear pattern of people close to Elvis secretly working against him for years. People he saw as friends, family, or loyal team members had been quietly reporting on his life, his thoughts, and his struggles, all without his knowledge. Letters and audio tapes told the heartbreaking story. Some of the people closest to him had been feeding personal details about his private life to outside parties. They were being paid large amounts of money that never showed up in official payment records or business reports. These weren't small rewards either. The hidden income was so steady and high it seemed many of them had built entire lifestyles around this secret betrayal. They weren't just doing it once. The documents showed these payments began in the mid-1960s and didn't stop until the day Elvis passed. That meant someone had been spying on him for over a decade and getting paid well to do it. What made it worse was the timing. These payments often increased whenever Elvis was about to make a big decision, either in his career or personal life. It became clear the information wasn't just being collected, it was being used. Someone, or maybe even a group of people, wanted to know what Elvis was planning so they could use that knowledge to control or stop him. Letters written by his manager, Colonel Parker, were especially troubling. They showed that he had been regularly passing along Elvis's private details to people who had no right to that information. These weren't fans or reporters, they were business partners, investors, and powerful outsiders. Colonel Parker was treating Elvis's pain and problems like business tools, trading deeply personal facts to get favors, money, or better deals. He didn't protect Elvis's privacy, he sold it. But the betrayal didn't stop there. Some of Elvis's most sensitive medical files were found in places they didn't belong. People who weren't doctors or family members had access to detailed notes about his health, his prescriptions, and private talks he had with doctors. Sharing that kind of medical information wasn't just wrong. It was a serious violation of trust and ethics, one that could only happen if someone close to Elvis helped make it possible. Even more disturbing were diary entries written by someone clearly close to Elvis, someone who saw him every day and knew everything about his routine. These entries were written like cold reports, not like personal journals. They described Elvis's moods, habits, conversations, and even emotional moments in stunning detail. The writers seemed more interested in tracking Elvis's behavior than in caring about his well-being. It was as if they were trying to predict his next move or figure out how to influence his choices. The entries showed they were watching him closely during his most private moments, times when he was vulnerable, hurting, or scared. That level of observation could only happen if the person had direct and constant access to him. The vault even held recordings of Elvis discovering what was going on. In those audio clips, you could hear the heartbreak in his voice as he confronted people he believed were working against him. He was shocked, angry, and deeply hurt. These were people he had helped, supported, and loved for years. Now, he was realizing they had been silently working behind his back, sharing his secrets, passing along his words, and even using his pain for personal gain. As time passed, Elvis became more and more isolated. He began pulling away from those around him, but not because he was imagining things. He was right. The vault proved he was surrounded by people he couldn't trust. Every time he tried to take back control of his life, whether by hiring a new lawyer, speaking to an advisor, or making a personal decision, his plans were leaked. And before he could act, someone had already worked to block him. Letters he wrote during those final years were filled with sadness. He admitted feeling trapped, not just by the legal contracts that tied him to others, but by the painful truth that the people in his own circle were holding him back. He saw clearly that many of them didn't want him to grow or heal or change. They wanted him stuck right where he was, because that's where he was easiest to control. It wasn't just his money or fame that had been taken. His trust, his privacy, and his peace of mind had also been stolen. The documents told the story of a man who was used, spied on, and betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect him. The comeback that never happened. Tucked away in that mysterious vault were papers that completely flipped the story the world thought they knew about Elvis's final days. These weren't just old notes or memorabilia. They were serious files that hinted something far deeper and more unsettling might have happened. Inside were hospital reports, schedules, and private records that painted a different version of events, one where Elvis wasn't spiraling out of control but actually trying to take back his life. The files showed that in his last few weeks, Elvis had made a real effort to reduce his use of medications. Contrary to the public belief that he was sinking deeper into addiction, the reports proved he was under medical care and slowly cutting back with the help of professionals. He wasn't being careless with his health, he was doing the opposite. This part of his story never made it to the media. Nobody heard about his determination to heal or the progress he was making. In fact, his health had started showing real improvement. There were records of weight loss and better vital signs, proving that his body was finally responding well to the changes he was making. He wasn't just surviving, he was fighting to live. And the sudden nature of his death made all of it more shocking. It left a haunting question behind. How could someone improving so much suddenly be gone? There were also notes and journals that showed Elvis had big plans for his future. He wasn't just thinking about the next tour. He was setting up major changes, breaking away from old contracts, choosing new legal advisors, and even planning to move away from Memphis. He had grown tired of being under control and was taking steps to gain his independence, both personally and professionally. His calendar was full of meetings with financial planners and lawyers to help him take back his business and cut ties with people who had taken advantage of him for years. Personal letters he had written in his final days revealed something even more touching. He was hopeful. For the first time in a long while, Elvis was dreaming again. He wrote about future projects, rebuilding relationships, and making plans that sounded like someone who truly believed he had more life to live. There was no sign he had given up or lost the will to go on. But the most chilling discovery was a sealed letter he had written himself, tucked away deep in the vault. It had clear instructions to be opened only if something unexpected ever happened to him. Inside, he left behind names of people he no longer trusted, evidence of shady dealings within his inner circle, and records of illegal financial activity. He had quietly been collecting proof, preparing to expose those who had betrayed him. All of it revealed one heartbreaking truth. Elvis wasn't fading away. He was standing up, reclaiming his life. And just when he was ready to turn things around, something stopped him. The secrets they buried with the king. What shocked everyone most were papers hinting that Elvis's death might have been carefully hidden behind a wall of secrets. Inside the vault were messages between his manager and unknown people, all talking about keeping certain facts from the public. These talks started just hours after Elvis passed, almost like they had planned it. They wanted to control what people knew and protect a version of the story that left out the dark parts. Strangely, the cover-up didn't stop in the 1970s. The files showed that someone was still hiding the truth well into the 1990s, long after the world had moved on. This makes you wonder, was Elvis's death really just a sad accident? Or was it the result of years of being watched, used, and betrayed by people he trusted most? What's in that vault tells a heartbreaking story of a star whose pain didn't end with his life, and that's the real tragedy. With what you already know, do you think there's more secrets yet to be unveiled about Presley? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.